I came to Michigan State and decided that journalism was a major for me, that it was something that I thought would be exciting. Basically came into it cold. And so I went into journalism. I worked at the State News. I remember having to beg for an opportunity to work at the State News because in the early 70s, if you wanted to write, if you wanted to get some practical experience as a journalist, the State News was your only option. You couldn't work for the Wolverine. And I think there was a publication called the Red Cedar Journal or the Red Cedar Review, but it was basically the State News or nothing. And today, students are so fortunate because they have so many opportunities. I mean, there are certainly challenges in the workplace because the way media is changing, but it's also changing in some ways for the better because there are so many more opportunities for them to write and express themselves and make a contribution. Perhaps the biggest change is maybe twofold. The internet, of course, has changed everything. It's there are so many more opportunities for people to be weighing in on issues that you may be working on, whether you work for a governor, whether you work for a company, whether you're working for yourself. I mean, everyone has an opinion. And so you don't have to worry just about the editorial page editor of the local newspaper or the reporter who's covering your beat. You have to worry about a blogger. You have to worry about a concerned citizen, someone who's following the issues, who is going to go out there and either report what you're doing or share an opinion about what you're doing. And so it's it's far vaster than it was than when we first got into this business. So that's a change, the internet. And I think the other change is the news cycle. It's 24/7. When I first started working in PR, you're worried about people on a 5 o'clock deadline. Now it's 24/7. And when I worked for the governor, always, you were on a 24/7 cycle. People calling you, people writing about you or your boss. And so you have to be very sensitive to that. And it goes to one of my core pieces of advice for people who are getting into the business now. Learn to be a good writer. Hone that skill because it doesn't matter what you're doing. You need to be able to write. You need to be able to write a memo. You need to be able to write your resume. You need to be able to write a savvy tweet for your company. You need to be able to write an op-ed for the opinion page. Whatever it is, writing is a skill that will serve you individually, as an individual, and as a professional. So I always emphasize to students, learn to write, hone that skill, and make certain that you use language because it's so important. So that's first. The second piece of advice I'd give anyone is make sure you learn to be a hard worker. There are a lot of smart people in the world, but they all don't like to work very hard. Not necessarily. So there's nothing more valuable to a team than to be a team player and to work hard. Your company will appreciate it, your supervisor will appreciate it, and it will serve you well. Because whether you're the smartest person in an organization or not, if you're the hardest worker in that organization, that will serve you well. So that's so important. Third thing I always tell people, or would like to tell people, is to be a good listener. You can learn a lot by listening to people. And that doesn't mean just being quiet, but concentrating on what they're saying. I have learned so much from people who were half again as older than me and almost more than half my age. So learn to listen to your colleagues, to people that you come in contact with, because you'll learn a lot from them. It's so important. The other thing I'd like to tell people is to be true to your values. We've seen here in the spring of 2011 a lot of PR disasters that have happened, and I don't need to chronicle them for people because most everyone knows what they are. And those PR disasters, I think, happened because people weren't true to their values, or they were working for someone or with someone who perhaps didn't share their values. If we look back here in 2011 at some of the more prominent PR disasters, I doubt that those disasters happened because PR professionals were not giving good advice. They happened because of problems in choices and values. So be true to your values and try to work for someone who shares your values. That'll really serve you well. And then finally, be nice to people and respect them. Treat them with respect. One of my friends, who happens to be an MSU grad as well, reminded me recently that it's a long and winding road we're traveling, and we don't know where that road's going to lead us to. So make sure you treat people nice and you treat them with respect. Well, certainly internships are so important, and I know when I was going to college, here at Michigan State. I was working. I was more focused on working and paying my tuition than I was in getting experience in working. It's why I guess I coveted that job at the State News as much as I did. So I think it's important to pursue internships, and that can be hard because not every internship pays. In fact, most of them don't pay. But if you can find a way to swing a great internship, do it, because you'll learn a lot. You'll bring some value to the organization you're working for, because again, we're learning from everyone. I've learned from the interns who served in our office as much as I've learned from the governor. So it's important to expose yourself to other people. So I think interns can bring value to organizations. And so I would say it's difficult. They can be hard to get, and they usually don't pay. But if you can get an internship, do it. I just like to say what I always like to say: go State.
We have more PR tips available on video at youtube.com/MSUPRSSA.